Tangled in barbed wire, it gets pretty rough. 1,000 chair shots, you think I had enough. Bang, 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 bang. Bang, bang. Bang, 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 bang. Bang, bang. But if I could change, choose between my family and the pain. Choose between my family and the fame. Yes, I would. If I could. Yes, I would. If I could. I don't want to spend my life inside this cage. Spend the rest of my life in unbearable pain. But when they call my name, yeah, when they call my name, hear him in the rafters. Bang, 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 bang.
Oh my God! He's
bang,
broken
bang.
in half! He's broken in half! That's enough!
Bang, bang, bang,
That's
bang,
enough!
bang.
Someone stop!
Bang, bang. But if I could change, if I could change, choose between my family and the pain. Choose between my family and the fame. Choose between my family and the pain. Choose between my family and the fame. Yes, I would. If I could. Yes, I would. If I could. Bang, 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 bang. Bang, bang.
No matter what's next.
All right. Uh-oh. Hello? Hello? Okay, we're good.
Loud and clear.
How's it going, everybody? Turns out I was cleaning off the board, wiping her down, and I had the volume down. How's it going, guys? Ben, can you hear everything okay?
Loud and clear, and here comes the train right on time.
All right, perfect.
Let's
Guys,
see if there's anybody on it.
you can't see that far away.
Actually, you can, and there's no one on it.
There has to be. You can't. There's really nobody on it?
Well, nobody's a strong word. Valid point. Didn't see anybody on it.
I mean, there's someone driving it. Okay.
That's true.
Guys, I'm wearing gloves today for the show. So, yeah. That's like
Do that
infamous
again.
noise.
I like that. Here comes another one.
Anyone on that one, Ben?
The conductor.
There we go.
Driving that train high on cocaine.
All right. Pat Rod says he could barely hear us. I just cranked us up. How about now, Pat Rod? Like I said, I was messing with the volume, cleaning this board. And I'm wearing gloves today.
Do that thing again, man.
Oh, yeah, that's what it is, huh?
Like a fool.
All
Love that song, man.
As you can tell, Ben's feeling fine. Your Ben Joravsky show today's the 25th, right?
Yep.
All right.
Time is flying.
Anyone else losing track of what day it is?
Yeah.
What month it is? Holy crap. Your Ben Joravsky show for Wednesday, March 25th is just moments away. Let me make sure Pat Rod can hear us. All right. He says, yes, that's better. All right. Your Ben Joravsky show for Wednesday, March 25th is moments away. But before we get into that, we got to thank the following unions for sponsoring this program. Unions like the International Association of Machinist and Aerospace Workers, Local 126 in District 8. The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9.
That is good.
The International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. And, of course, today's Ben Joravsky show is brought to you by our good friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. Hope you're doing okay, Bob Ryder. Benny J, let's hear a song of the day.
My Corona. I've been singing that song every day I wake up, and I just hop out of bed and start singing my Corona.
Please, let that be the last time you sing that on this show.
Yeah.
Too
Probably
soon and a little cringy.
I shouldn't share those things. Ben, restraint. Social distancing.
The Ben Joravsky show starts now. It is Wednesday, March 25th, and live from Ben's house, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. Today on the program, legendary Chicago journalist Monroe Anderson will join us by phone. And we welcome also by phone our good friend and political scientist, Loreen Targos. And now your host. It only takes one listen to this show to know that he's not a political scientist. Chicago Reader columnist, Ben Joravsky.
Hello, everybody. Ben Joravsky here. We're calling this Fantastic Voyage Wednesday. And here's why. I took a trip through Donald Trump's brain yesterday, D.
Oh, lucky you.
Yeah, I'm calling it Fantastic Voyage. I'm naming it for a movie that came out many, many years ago. When I was a wee lad, and it was about these scientists who got into who shrunk themselves like beyond, smaller than ants. They were really small, folks, and they got into a tiny submarine that went on a trip through the human body. I vaguely remember seeing this movie way back in the 1960s and thinking, oh my God, this is really cool. Don't hold me to that, folks. I was very young and very impressionable. For all I know, it's a terrible movie. But the point is, whenever I get this notion of this metaphorical notion of going into someone's brain, I think of it as a fantastic voyage, a fantastic journey. So that's what it was. Yesterday, I was taking a trip through Donald Trump's brain, and let me just set it up for you a little bit, folks. I've been getting a greater dosage of Donald Trump during the era of coronavirus, and than I had before. I kind of wasn't really a Trumpaholic, if you know what I'm saying, D. I mean, I didn't like obsessively listen to him or follow his interviews, but now that I'm turning to him for leadership and guidance as our president,
That's where it all starts, by the way.
what's that?
Next thing you know, next week, Ben's going to be a crazy Trumper.
Hey, I'm wearing a red hat
You're
today.
wearing your red hat. That's where it all starts, just saying.
At the bowling alley, the guy saw me wearing this red hat. He goes, "You're a mega hat guy." And the guy was actually a Trump supporter. And
Oh, you want to hang out this weekend? Hey there. Hey, nice hat. Wabbish. Find me on Wabbish.
yeah, want to hang out this? Not really. Not for the next year or so. Anyway, so watching Trump's press conference or his briefing, whatever they call it. This is the one that was in the Rose Garden, and he set it up. He was sitting next to Pence. They were actually doing social distancing. It only took them like a month to figure this out. So you got Trump, and you got Pence, and you got the Surgeon General, and you have a doctor, and they don't have Dr. Fauci anywhere. Apparently, he's off the radar now. He got Trump mad because he said he said something that contradicted what Trump said. That's it. You're gone. Beat it. You know, here's a funny thing, just on a tangent within a tangent. All my friends of the right-wing persuasion are always talking about free expression and how we should just appreciate the need for free expression. This is an old debate. We haven't heard this one in a while. Coronavirus. A lot of the great old debates have fallen by the wayside, Dave. You notice that in the age of coronavirus? The whole free expression debate, they should allow anybody to go to anywhere and say anything that insulted anybody, and so what? Man it up. Take it. Don't be a snowflake.
I love it. You say the age of coronavirus. It's been like 2 weeks.
No, but it's like everything's changed. Anyway, but that doesn't work with Trump. If you say anything, if you exercise your First Amendment right, your free expression right, to say what's on your mind, even if it's like you're scientifically accurate and he's not, he gets offended. Boom, that's it. You're gone. Isn't that interesting? So I guess there's only free expression for right-wingers. Anyway.
I believe the term is "you're fired."
You're fired. He hasn't fired this doctor yet. He hasn't quite. With Trump, it's like he's not like first there's like exile, and then they fire you. And there's he rips you in Twitter with a tweet. But how long did he keep Jeff Sessions just hanging around? Remember, he was mocking him and taunting him on Twitter, and then finally he got rid of him. It took a while. Anyway, so all right, so Fauci wasn't there. It was these other people, the Surgeon General. But that doesn't really matter who was there. But the point is, it was at this Rose Garden briefing where
oh my God, Fauci's on the brown line.
he's driving. He and Rahm are driving the brown line. Oh, the good old days. Rahm Emanuel, mayor of the city of Chicago, giving advice to New York on how to run a transit. Remember
Fauci, don't touch that rail.
The good old days when we could talk about. By the way, that yesterday's show where Dave Glowatz came in and did this city council report was really, folks, I enjoyed that immensely. It
was much needed for you.
Yes, it was going. I was thinking of bringing Dave back today, but I realized maybe next week we'll bring, because he didn't quite finish the report. He had more things to talk about. It was just, there was just something quaint and satisfying about dealing with local issues, which were not linked to like whether we're going to live or die, those kinds of issues, although they're very important. Anyway, so going back to Donald Trump, so he made the pronouncement that he wants the economy opened up by Easter. He was very specific. He said Easter. And, I've kind of lost, as Dennis said, I've lost track of time. So when he said that, I was like, when is Easter? And I looked it up, and it's April 12th. That's about 3 weeks from now. And so, 3 weeks? I mean, it's very bizarre. His comment was very bizarre on a number of levels. Number one, it bears absolutely no relation to what the experts, scientists, and doctors are telling us, that the coronavirus epidemic is only going to get worse before it gets better. So it's highly unlikely that we'd be, quote unquote, opening up the economy and encouraging people to go back to work by Easter in 3 weeks, by April 12th. Moreover, what he was specifically talking about was the beautiful sight, and I'll read his exact quote, of people in church. And he said, I just thought it would be a beautiful time. Wouldn't it be great to have all the churches full? You'd have packed churches all over our country. I think it would be a beautiful time. That's classic Trump, by the way, the repetition, some basic points. He's actually quite skillful at that, D. It's sort of like a rock song that just
Like I
repeats
said, that's
itself.
how it all starts. Next thing you know, Ben's going to be a Trump lover. Oh, actually, I got to give him a compliment there. It's pretty good.
Well, I have to admit, he did get elected president somehow or other. He figured that out. So anyway, this notion of packed churches, which completely contradicts absolutely everything that the experts are saying we should be doing. They're saying don't go into confined spaces. Even if you do go outside, make sure you're 6 feet apart. In fact, there was just this video I saw. I forget where I saw it. Some reporter was explaining that when you're walking down the street, you should actually give people 6 feet of space. This is one of my pet peeves, D. People who walk at you. It's like, don't they realize that there's this whole social distancing thing going on? You know, I have this propensity, this tendency to cross the street anyway when people are coming at me. But right now, it's like people coming like literally right at you. So I go, all right, this guy's coming at me. I'm going to veer to the right to avoid him. He keeps coming. It's like I'm a magnet, and he's keep coming. So that, you know what? I'm going to just walk.
Maybe he's a fan. He wanted an autograph.
Walk into the street. Just literally do a 90-degree
Great. Running away from your fans. You want autographs.
Oh, these guys aren't fans. Anyway, so weird behavior. But we're being encouraged to practice social distancing. We're being encouraged to avoid going into crowded spaces. Even that kid, that the baseball playing kid from Cincinnati who made a fool of himself with the interview in Florida. He goes, I can't worry about Corona, man. I got a party on. Remember that guy with the backwards hat?
Yeah.
Even that guy has apologized.
Too many sports, not enough classes, guy. Come on.
You know, I don't know. The weird thing, now here's a tangent within a tangent. I think his first name is Bradley. Don't quote me on that, anybody. You know, but when I first saw his Corona comments, which was of course blowing up on Twitter, I looked him up and I saw he was a basketball player. He played high school basketball, and I go, isn't he aware that the NBA shut? Did he ever think like there was a reason why they closed it? You know, they didn't want all the players to get sick. Well, they don't want the fans to get sick, but for a while they were talking about having the games without fans. You would figure at the very least, I'm not saying that he has to be really smart, just mildly curious. You know, is there a reason why that? And anyway, all right. Even that guy, that kid, is saying, you know what, I was wrong. I apologize. I hope nobody literally does what I do. Even he has said, but there's Donald Trump saying packed churches, and I'm like, really bizarre. First of all, he's not really that religious guy. I'm thinking about this, D. I can't recall Donald Trump going to church on a regular basis. I think mostly like on Sundays before the coronavirus. He'd be hanging around the White House. He'd go play golf, you know, or he'd go down to Florida, go play golf. I mean, you know, go play golf. I mean, that's kind of what he did, right, D? I don't recall Donald Trump. I think Donald Trump's going to church. I know Frank will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Donald Trump went to church the day he was sworn in as president. He went to church for a couple funerals, I know. I don't believe he's been to church much more than that. So like this notion of being inspired and moved by the scene of a church, it's like, well, if you like church so much, why don't you go to church? And then, you know, he's not particularly a religious person, right? I mean, I hate to...
Well, you say that, but they asked him if he was a fan of the Old Testament or the New Testament. He said it's probably equal.
Okay.
Remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that. I mean, I'm not sure he knows that there is an Old Testament and a New Testament, you know. Maybe he didn't learn that, okay? That was a trick question.
And, you know, he also said, quote, you know, when I talk about the Bible, it's very personal, so I don't want to get into verses, all right? Don't get into that. Yeah. The Bible means a lot to him, but I don't want to get into specifics.
Right, don't want to get into specifics, probably because he can't, but that's okay. I'm not that good at Bible verses either, all right? So, but I would admit it. I go, well, I don't really study the Bible.
Well,
so.
I'm dumb. So,
but I'm not trying to make myself out to be a man of faith and belief that inspired by the image of people in a church. That's what Donald Trump is trying to get across. I mean, by the way, he's not in any way like he doesn't live by like the 10 Commandments. You know, he's not following the scripture. He's not living like a spiritual life. This is the guy, just to remind you, everybody, who is carrying on with a porn star about, I don't know, a week or two after his wife gave birth. Remember that, D? Remember the porn star?
Yeah.
Stormy Daniels? Have we forgotten that already? So it's like, why would he be so inspired and moved by a church scene? My guess, of course, the obvious, is that he is invoking some image that he realizes he thinks will appeal to his supporters. Many of his supporters are evangelicals. They support him precisely because the one thing he won't budge on is opposition to abortion rights for women. So they will follow him through thick and thin because of that. And he is smart enough, here, more credit to Trump, he's smart enough to realize he can't waver on that at all. It's about the one thing he can't waver on, and he won't waver on it. And so here's like a bone he's throwing out to them. This church scene, and we'll all be packed into the church. It'll be packed in the church. You don't want people packed into the church. You know? Now, listen, I realize that I just raised the subject of Donald Trump's infidelities, D. I realize that. And I know I'm going to get into trouble from a lot of my moderate friends. I'm in trouble with them a lot these days, D. Yeah. They're all mad at me now because I wrote a column for The Reader, in which I said Joe Biden, if he doesn't want to be the nominee for the Democratic Party, should step aside and let somebody else be the nominee. Because I made these comments, or I wrote this column because he disappeared. He vanished for 6 or 7 days. And immediately, many of my centrist friends who are very sensitive to this issue, they really like Joe Biden. I can't quite grasp why they like Joe Biden so much, D, but they really like Joe Biden. Maybe it's because they don't want to be wrong about their assessment that he was the most electable, when at the moment he looks like the least electable. When I think of the 15 people who are on stage, or 16 of it, whatever it was, way back when in the summer when we were watching those early debates, remember they did them in shifts? Oh, they were 20 at one point, 10.
The good old days, I call them.
Yes, the good old days before anybody knew what the coronavirus was. When I think about the 20 people on stage, I got to tell you, I would say maybe 15 of them, 15, conservatively speaking, are probably better equipped to be the Democratic nominee running against Donald Trump right now, at least in the ability to articulate opposition to how Donald Trump is leading, or articulating how you would run the government, what you would do, or just showing up and having a complete sentence. I was listening to Joe Biden the other day on The View, and I sent Dennis this one quote's making the rounds.
Oh, yeah.
You want to play that, D?
Yeah, I got it.
Would reassess the recommended period for keeping businesses shut and people at home. Are you at all concerned, as Trump said, that we cannot let the cure be worse than the problem itself?
We have to take care of the cure. That will make the problem worse no matter what. No matter what. We know what has to be done.
Whoa.
We know you have to...
Would reassess the recommended period.
We have to take care of the cure. That will make things worse no matter what. D, that's our candidate. That's the guy who's leading us in the battle, okay? I mean, listen, I know I'm the one who's been saying for all these weeks that being able to express yourself in a simple sentence is overrated in politics. In many ways, what Joe Biden uttered was more cogent than half the things that Richard M. Daley said as mayor of the city of Chicago, and people reelected him year after year. So I realize that. I realize the bar's low when it comes to Democratic voters. They don't really care if their leaders can speak in a straight sentence, but I don't.
Ken Davis?
That one's tough, folks. It's going to be hard for me to rally around Joe Biden when he's, offering such pearls of wisdom like he is there. The cure is worse. Anyway. So I'm in trouble with my moderate listeners who are saying I'm too hard on Joe Biden. And in general, moderate Democrats believe that we should just get along, we should be nice, and we shouldn't criticize. And so even just mentioning that Trump had infidelities and that he might be a raging hypocrite when he invokes images of people packed into churches when he himself never goes to church and doesn't have an ounce of anything remotely resembling religious belief in him. Even just mentioning that is, no, Ben, that's not nice. This is a time of national catastrophe. We should be all coming together. Don't say anything bad about Donald Trump. This is how many moderate Democrats view the world. So I realize I'm even now in more trouble than I already was when I criticized Joe Biden. Let me say this. In contrast, I watched Governor Cuomo. I was taken to watch Governor Cuomo, wishing that he were the Democratic nominee. I was watching Governor Cuomo. I could talk about the Cuomos forever. I was a fan of his father, Mario Cuomo, the former governor of New York. Anyway, I was watching Andrew Cuomo give his press briefing today. And at the end of the press briefing, he was critical of the package that the Senate passed. The Senate passed, I don't know if the vote has gone down, D, but they agreed in faith, essentially, to a bailout, billions and billions of dollars, a $2 trillion deal. I think it was $2 trillion. Think about that, folks. It was just about a month ago that Joe Biden said we couldn't afford health care for all, that it was too expensive for the country. Now we have $2 trillion bailout deal. All right, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have criticized Joe Biden. I apologize again for doing that. But anyway, so they're completing the deal. And, of course, the markets had a brief reaction of optimism because it looks as though they're going to pump money into, like, airlines industries and fortify some struggling industries in this country. So there was a bit of a market rebound. So the notion is that as Americans, we should all be happy that we're coming together. But Cuomo, he's like, you know what? It wasn't enough. The money that they approved does not give us enough money in New York. We have far greater needs. And I know we're not supposed to be political at this time. We're all supposed to be nice in the sandbox. That's what he said. But sometimes you have to, play with sharp elbows. You have to use sharp elbows. Like, yeah, there you go. Yeah, rough and tumble. Guy ready to fight the Republicans. Oh, no, my moderate friends. No, Ben. No. Got to get along. Don't say anything. Just vanish for a while. Anyway, it's going to be a new me today, D. I'm going to be nice.
Yeah, I know. You're going to be a Trump lover in about a week.
Nice and polite. From here on out, I'm going to follow the advice of my centrist Biden-loving fans. I'm just going to say nothing but nice things about Joe Biden and Donald Trump. How about that, D?
That's good. Well, let's just get this out of the way then.
Play the radio. Make sure the television, make sure you have the record player on at night. The phone. Make sure the kids hear words.
That's your guy, Democrats. That's your leader. We got a great show today, everybody. Monroe Anderson will be here. He's all fine. You know what? Monroe's a Democrat of the centrist persuasion, and I know he's going to defend Joe Biden. I talked to him briefly today. He's all ready to defend Joe Biden, so I'll be curious to see what he has said. And then, point counterpoint, Loreen Targos will be coming in, EPA scientist, political activist from the Southwest side, a big-time Bernie supporter. I'm sure she'll be a little more critical about Joe Biden and the direction he's leading the Democratic Party. Also, she'll have a lot of interesting things to say about being a scientist in the age of Trump. So lots of good conversation ahead of us, lots of political talk. But before we do any of that, the young man from Alton, the man they call the doctor, with the news.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Yes, I'm wearing gloves, but I'm not a doctor. All right, let's talk about what COVID-19 related news is happening in Chicago and or Illinois this afternoon. Turns out you can't escape it. I tried, guys. Every story has to do with COVID-19. So first up, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker. Looking awful presidential these days, wouldn't you say?
Oh, yeah. Well, Pritzker, Cuomo. Right now, Joe Biden, step down, take your choice, Pritzker or Cuomo.
Donald Trump looking very much like Donald Trump these days. All right, Governor Pritzker continues his media blast against President Donald Trump after Trump announced his plan to get the country up and running again by the April 12th Easter holiday. By the way, if you couldn't tell already how we feel about that, horrible plan. Awful plan.
Yeah, really dumb idea.
J.B. Pritzker has thankfully pushed back at his daily briefing, saying something that, well, we've known all along about Donald Trump. Quote, I don't think he's thinking of the science. Could have told you that one, Pritzker, about a year ago.
You could have taken the word science out of that sentence.
I don't think he's thinking just of the science. That's good. All right, he continues by saying, quote, I think he's looking at the stock market, which I know he essentially judges himself by and making decisions that way. Everybody is suffering, but I think the president is not taking into account the true damage that this will do to our country if we see truly millions of people die. And that's what I think would happen. That's what the scientists and doctors tell us us would happen. Restrictions are working. Closing bars, restaurants, and schools and staying indoors all helps mitigate spread. If you don't have these restrictions on, the damage that would be done, the lives that would be lost, the overrunning of our healthcare system would lead to real devastation. So I'm very, very concerned about what the president is saying. Ben Joravsky, are you ready to jump on board with my prediction? JB Pritzker 2024.
Well, first of all, your prediction is rooted in the notion that the Democrats won't win in 2020. Because if the Democrats win in 2020, whoever that candidate
Well, I guess
is.
I'll have to play this again.
Play the radio. Make sure the television, make sure you have the record player on at night, the phone. Make sure the kids hear words.
You're being mean to our centrist friends, Dennis, okay? Be nice, all right? Praise Joe Biden. Just praise him to death. All right, anyway, if you work from the assumption that Donald Trump will win re-election, then yes, I think there's a very good chance that J.B. Pritzker will be a presidential candidate. Look, we said this going back, way back in the old days when he was running for governor. Remember, he came into the old studio, and he was a very skillful politician. He had the...
Remember you asked him about the Obama thing?
Yeah, what did he say? I can't remember.
Well, you were kind of like very blunt about it. You were like, hey, man, remember when you flip-flopped on that Obama statement?
Yeah.
Come on, I did not flip-flop, Ben.
That's right, I said
I did not flip-flop.
Oh, the good old days. We had J.B. Pritzker in the studio, and yes, that was when there was that video that emerged at some point. I thought it was going to be devastating to his campaign. Little did I know that the people really were going to go for him big time. They figured out, as Terry Cosgrove said, the best way to beat a billionaire is to nominate a billionaire. Anyway, so J.B. Pritzker came in, and I asked him about that. There was a footage of him being uncertain as to whether he would endorse Obama. This is like in 2012. And he very skillfully and nimbly ducked and dodged that one. We used to call him Sugar Ray Pritzker, because he was so quick on his feet. He's a very skillful politician. He shows tremendous empathy for people. And then you say, well, he's a wealthy man. That he doesn't have much in common with 99% of the universe. That is true. And yet he shows empathy, something that Donald Trump does not show. And so, yes, he's a very skillful politician. I think he has ambitions, and I do believe there's a chance, if the Democrats don't win in 2020, that he would run in 2024. But I am not eliminating I'm not saying the Democrats won't win in 2020. I'm not jumping aboard that bandwagon. I don't know where this thing's going to go. I've been having a lot of conversations, Dee, as you know, over the last couple of days, not just on the air, but off the air on my obsessive telephone calling that I do all the time with people, as to the likelihood of the Democrats replacing Joe Biden with somebody else. I mean, first of all, he disappeared for 6 days, which is inexcusable in an election. I don't care what his defenders tell me. They go, Ben, you don't understand. He doesn't need to be in the spotlight now. What matters is where he is in September. Oh, he'll be so far behind in the polls by September.
It's like when my mom gets worried about me. Can't you call? Call me. Come on. Give us a phone call. Say hi.
Yeah, just
Let
say
us know
hi.
you're okay.
Absolutely. That you exist. And then when he does show up, he's terrible. But anyway, shouldn't be critical. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So there's a chance that somebody, they may replace him. I remember this, speaking of Cuomo, I'm a tangent within a tangent here. Probably talk about this with Monroe.
Typical day.
Typical day.
Tangent within a tangent.
There was a time Governor Cuomo's father was Mario Cuomo, former governor of New York, for millennial listeners who are too young to remember that or know that. They weren't even born yet. And in 1984, he gave the keynote address at the Democratic Convention, and the Democratic nominee that year was Walter Mondale. And I remember Mike Royko, the columnist for, in those days, the Sun-Times, wrote a column that's saying the Democrats, if they had any brain, they would immediately replace Mondale with Cuomo, because Cuomo was a standard bearer that could really rally people against Reagan. Of course, that didn't happen. But wouldn't that be interesting if all these years later, the Democrats replaced Biden with Cuomo at this convention? So anyway, you're right. J.B. Pritzker has a lot of potential and promise, and I would not be surprised if someday he runs for president.
Yeah, come on. Not Cuomo. We got to be a homer now. Come on, Pritzker. Home team.
Yeah, okay. Wouldn't it be great if we could choose between, like, two really capable people? Well, we have Bernie in the race. I should not. You know what? Miles will be coming on tomorrow, and Loreen will be coming on later today. It'll be chiding me for making concessions. It's not over yet. Biden has not secured the nomination.
I was going to say, our Chicago mayor has weighed in as well. Mayor Lori Lightfoot spoke on Trump's Easter surprise and President Trump in general, saying, quote, he has said things that are flat out wrong. Trump has very able people at his disposal. He can tap into a worldwide network of science experts. He's not doing that. Trump is contributing to fake news. The things we're hearing on a daily basis coming from the president are unreliable and frankly scary because there are people who still credit him as a reliable source of information. We're not doing that here in Chicago.
Relying on him as a credible source of information, yes, I would say. Listen, I don't even know if the people who wear the MAGA hats believe that Donald Trump is a credible source of information. I believe that the MAGA hat wearers, and I've read many MAGA hat wearing columns by various MAGA hat lovers down through the years, they just hate Democrats so much that they stick with Trump. And Trump just feeds their hatred of Democrats, of Democratic elites, of Hollywood actors who always are telling them how to live their lives, of people who are against, who are for gun control, all these things that they hate. So I'm not even sure they believe Donald Trump. I mean, I can't believe that somebody watches Donald Trump talk about packing the churches at Easter, knowing that this is a guy who was playing around on his wife weeks after she gave birth to their kid. We think that this is a man of faith who really cares. I have a hard time believing that, D. I just think it's a cynical acceptance of Donald Trump as the man that you love because you hate the same people he hates. I don't know. Maybe I'm giving too much credit to Trump lovers.
Shout out to our good friend Jim. He's on the live stream chat. Jim actually was a big listener of the show, before you got fired. The radio days.
Oh, yeah.
Jim looks like he's found us online, and he's joining us on the live stream chat. Jimbo, you're the man. He actually let me know here that Lori Lightfoot is giving her speech right now, her daily update here on COVID-19. I got it pulled up here. It's not Lightfoot. It's this lady. I'm not sure what her name is, but here we go.
So, it was just, 2 weeks ago maybe that we announced the first case of community spread. And increasingly, as I've been saying, everybody is going to know somebody who has had coronavirus or a friend of a friend, an exposure, because we're seeing it in the community. Early on, we could follow. We did a lot of work following every every traveler from China. Lots of work around every contact of any potential case. We're not at a point anymore where you can always know who is at risk. Right? And so this recommendation about really being in as little contact as we're able to is because I can't say right now when someone is diagnosed for sure how they got it. In most cases, as we've seen in, here in Chicago, around the world, it is a close contact in the household. But in terms of where that started and how it came in, a lot of times we don't even necessarily know at this point. And so this isn't an on-off switch, but it's a signal. We put the orders in because it's a signal that increasingly it's here in Chicago.
Thank you, Tom. We're going to take questions from Kate.
All right, Dr. Arwoody, while we still, sorry, Mayor. This question.
All right, we're going to play more of that throughout the day.
I think that was Health Commissioner Allison Arwoody. That's who that was speaking. The Commissioner of Health for the city of Chicago. And, it's funny, Dee, you didn't ask me, do I think Lori Lightfoot has presidential aspirations?
No, it slipped my mind.
I don't think she has presidential. I think Lori Lightfoot's like, what did I get myself into again? Why did I give up my cushy corporate career as a lawyer?
And here's Rahm Emanuel just like, oh, okay, I can sit back and relax now.
Yeah, Rahm Emanuel. I every day I always say, thank goodness Rahm's not our mayor right now. Anyway, Lori Lightfoot's doing okay, I guess. But I'm not surprised that Lori Lightfoot is ripping Donald Trump. I appreciate the fact that she's doing that to a certain degree because I do believe, unlike my moderate Democratic friends, that it's very important to be critical of Donald Trump. He's so absurd, and the pronouncements he makes are so dangerous in so many ways that, yes, you should criticize him. You should stand up to him. You should not just go along because you're supposed to play nice in when you deal with Republicans, which is what so many of moderate centrist Democratic friends think.
All right, and it seems like JB Pritzker gives his daily updates right when our show ends. So I'll try and get some audio from that maybe tonight if I can, and play some of it tomorrow. It's a weird time to where by the time our show comes on the next day, you've already heard it. So it's very interesting how we're doing the show and how these are all working out. But we'll play some more of Lori Lightfoot as today rolls along here. Let's call up Monroe Anderson right now and see if we can get him on the line and have him defend Joe Biden. 'Cause, boy, we were ripping him there for the last 30 minutes.
We need to hear a defense of Joe Biden because, yes, I've been very critical of him the last 2 days. And I was surprised by the feedback I got, D. A lot of people very upset with me for criticizing Joe Biden.
All right, I got to call Monroe one more time here. Got to make sure. Oh, there we go. Oh, Monroe, are you there? Okay, 1 second here. Okay, this is always fun. Monroe, oh, wait, hold on. Monroe, can you hear us? Wait, hold on. There we go. Now I think we'll be able to.
Yeah, you're good.
There we go.
All right. Loud and clear,
Okay.
Monroe.
Yes. Are we on yet?
We are on. You're on live, and I've got many things I want to talk to you about. This is as clear as you ever come through, so I'm really glad we got this Facebook connection going here. Got to give Zuckerberg a little credit for that. All right, Monroe, so much to talk about, but I've been just saying how I needed to hear someone defend Joe Biden. I've been very critical of Joe Biden for the last couple days as a standard bearer for the Democratic Party. And I feel as though he disappeared when he was needed the most. And now that he's emerged, I can see why he disappeared, because he's stumbling all over the place. And I want to hear the opposing view from a Democrat to explain why I should be, confident that Joe Biden is the perfect person, the right person for this moment in time to lead the Democratic opposition to Donald Trump. So can you offer me that confidence?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, this is how you have to think about it. There by the law, the U.S. Constitution law, there has to be an election on November 3rd of this year. You will have a binary choice. It will either be Donald Trump or Joe Biden. That's a no-brainer. Ta-da!
And so, your point? I should have confidence
My point
in
is
that?
that's how democracy works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to understand
what are you understanding about the U.S. Constitution, the way presidents are selected in this country? Where is your confusion? Except you just being a Bernie bro.
Well, okay. First of all, I understand that there will be an election in November. But what I'm saying is I'm starting to question whether Joe Biden will be the best representative that Democrats can have to make the argument against Donald Trump and to convince voters to switch from Trump to Democrats or to show up in the first place. And that's what I'm asking you for. And I'm saying the reason I have my doubts is his behavior over the last week in disappearing. And then when he came out yesterday, he stumbled. So I realize there will be a choice in November. I realize that if all things go well and Donald Trump doesn't manage to delay the election somehow or other, we will have an election and it'll be a Democrat versus a Republican and maybe a few third-party candidates on the side. So I understand all that. But my question is, why are you confident that Joe Biden is the best representative that Democrats can have going against Trump?
If we had a doorknob running against Trump, that would be the better. The mission is to get Trump out of there before he would come. Looking at Biden's peculiarities, And Joe has been this way. I mean, there are those who want to blame it on his being old. I mean, he was screwing up 30 years ago on things he said and done. That's Joe Biden. Just like Trump lies habitually and is corrupt. I mean, you get what you get, and so this is our choice, or will be our choice.
All right. Well, we'll just have to end it there. You didn't do much to convince me that this is the best person the Democrats can have going forth, other than to say this is the person the Democrats will have going forth.
Well, Trump, this is the thing is that Joe has the delegates. He is going to be the nominee. He is going to be up against Trump. So, who do you go for? Do you go for the corrupt, lying old man, or do you go for the bumbling and the speech old man?
Okay.
And you can't even flip a coin on it.
Okay.
And you go against Trump.
Uh-huh.
As I have posted in my arguments with some of your Bernie bros, is that the position we have to take is anybody but Trump, period. Anybody.
All right.
Unless David Duke enters the race or something.
And what did you say? What was the last line you said?
Unless David Dukes enters the race or something.
Well, I do hold open. I hold open the possibility that there could be a change that we don't see, and we'll just leave it there for the moment.
Oh yeah, now let me give you a one scenario.
Go ahead.
Trump has not done the distancing thing that he should have been doing. Neither has Pence. So the virus takes both of them out. And I mean out. I'm not talking about where they go home to rest, but they don't live to talk about this. Then we have President Pelosi.
Monroe, I've been listening to your fantasies on this level for a long time. I always enjoy them. Always makes me feel good. Yes, indeed. Okay.
No, right. No, it's not a fantasy in the sense of that I'm hoping this will happen.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just pointing out that it could happen.
Well, it could happen, yes, indeed. And so yesterday they had their press briefing in the Rose Garden. I just want to say they were practicing social distancing. First time they've done that in a while. They were sitting, I don't know if you saw it.
Yeah, no, it's a little bit late for that.
Yeah, it's a little late for that.
Because what happens, the way this virus is acting, mm-hmm. is that what you do today won't materialize till 3 weeks from now. So they weren't practicing distancing 3 weeks ago. And so they may already be in trouble. Prince Charles, I don't know if you heard this, but Prince Charles now has the virus.
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed. I heard that. Yeah.
Yeah. And Charles is in the age range where it could be dangerous. Trump is in the age range where it could be dangerous. Pence, I'm pretty sure is in the age range. I haven't checked on his age, but I think he's over 60.
So
I'm pretty sure he's over.
Monroe, speaking of the notion of the age range where it was dangerous, the Lieutenant Governor of Texas offered up an interesting perspective that grandparents should voluntarily give up their lives for their grandkids going forward. Yeah, what you think about that?
That's the Republican way. Right. No, that's the Republican way. Do we go for the money, or do we go for grandma and grandpa? Let's go for the money. You know, I mean, that's what Trump is doing. That's why he says Easter time, go pack the churches. We want to get our people back to work, although the virus hasn't even peaked yet, because he's worried about losing the election on one of the two legs. Well, he has a three-leg stool. One is putting racist young white men in judgeship. One is the stock market performing well, and the other is the economy performing well with the unemployment numbers low. We're already in a recession. We may be in a depression by November. The stock market is less now than it was when he took office. So he doesn't have those two legs to balance his stool. The only thing he has is, well, he's given us a lot of young racist white men in positions, in judgeships. So he's desperate. He's desperate to try and come up with something. So, okay, if they die, they die, but let's put them back to work so we can say that unemployment is not as bad as it is. In fact, I don't know if you caught this or not, but last week he asked states not to publish or announce their unemployment rates.
Mm-hmm.
Individual states.
Yeah.
You know, but the problem is that if you're sitting at home not working and talking to your friends on the phone or watching Netflix or whatever you're doing, you know who's not working. And that's what matters, not the stats so much, is the fact that you don't have a job. And, you know, this $2 trillion bill that the Democrats and Republicans are working on will be better than nothing, but it's a Band-Aid on a major problem.
I have not had an opportunity to read all the details of this bill, just sort of the bare bones reporting that's come out.
Right, because they're still hashing through them. So,
yeah,
but the one thing that one of the things that was hanging it up was Trump wanted all this money, $500 billion, $500 billion, as a slush fund, basically, where the companies, the corporations could do with it as they choose. And if you'll recall, during the last financial crisis we had in 2008, we bailed the banks out, and the banks took the money that we bailed them out with and bought back their shares, reinvested the money in shares instead of their employees, which means that the CEOs got bigger salaries than they were going to get because their salaries were based on the bottom line. So they made the bottom line better, but it did nothing for the average American, working American. And so the Democrats were insisting that there be some accountability. And Trump's response to that was, I'll take the responsibility for that. You're talking about a fox in the hen house situation.
Yeah. Yeah. The interesting thing I noted was I was watching Governor Cuomo's briefing. Like you, I've taken to watching Governor Cuomo and getting his take on reality every day.
Right.
Is that his initial response of the bill was that he was critical of the bill, and he made a few comments that I appreciated. He said that he was alluding to the centrist Democrats who don't like to criticize Trump at this time, who believe that you should just go along to get along with this president. He knows they're telling him to be nice in the sandbox, play nice in the sandbox, but he's not going to play nice if it's going to shortchange his state. And his initial response to the bill was that it was not giving enough money to the states, particularly New York, which is hit so hard. And
Right.
I assume Illinois will be hit as hard as well. What's your rating of?
Yeah, maybe 2 or 3 weeks from now. But yeah, it's coming our way.
It's coming our way, yeah. So what's your thoughts on not playing nice with Donald Trump and Governor Cuomo's advice to go at him with sharp elbows?
Well, but that's not 100% true. He said nice things about Trump. And Trump has used that as an example of how great a job he's doing. That even Cuomo said nice things about him. This is the reality, is that if you're a governor, then you have to play nice with the president to some extent, because you're going to need favors from him for your people. For example, if you recall, when Hurricane Sandy hit, Chris Christie had the gumption to be seen with Obama and looking friendly, and the teabaggers went crazy over that.
You're right.
Yeah.
Good point.
It's like he's just listening and smiling.
Yeah.
So, but Christie was sucking up to Obama because he's going to need that money, that federal assistance, to take care of his people.
Yeah.
In the meantime, and with Trump has been playing quid pro quo with the governor.
Yeah.
It's like, well, what are you going to do for me?
Yeah.
Well, we're in such a weird world. If this was a Twilight Zone, people would go, well, Rod Serling went too far on this.
No, you're right, Monroe. And in that same press briefing, I watched Cuomo. You're absolutely correct. I watched how he dealt with Trump and the language that he used, and reporters would throw him questions which would enable him to criticize Trump, but he resisted making direct criticism of the Trump of the kind that I would make or have made.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
It's just like with Anthony Fauci, the doctor.
Yeah.
He's standing there, and Trump is lying through his teeth.
Yeah.
And Fauci, then the reporter called Fauci and said, "Well, will drinking bleach actually cure coronavirus?" And Fauci said, "Well, there's not much evidence of that." Instead of this guy is wacko, and Fauci, who dates all the way back to HIV, has this incredible reputation. So he could just walk away from this. He doesn't have to hang in there. But I think as a matter of national security and professionalism, he's there. Because if he weren't there, it would be worse.
Yeah, he is there. We don't know how long he'll stay there. There have been articles.
They shoot him, but they shoot him in the head, get rid of him.
Yeah, I mean,
he may wake up tomorrow and see a tweet.
Yeah.
Saying that he's gone.
Yeah, I noted he was not invited for the Rose Garden briefing where Trump made his Easter remarks. But yeah, he's sort of a tenuous there. I was likening him to some of the other aides. You could watch a progression where Trump was showing his displeasure with an aide and would start with a tweet, and then the person would not be invited back to the White House, and suddenly there would be articles about how behind the scenes Trump was livid at the person, and next thing you know, the person's gone. So I don't know if he can do that with the doctor, but I do think there's a pattern, and I'm watching. I'm watching how it develops with Dr. Fauci as well.
Yeah. Because last week, maybe it was Thursday or Friday, when Trump had his briefings, his daily briefings, which is mainly a campaign event for him.
Mm-hmm.
But as he was having it, he started going on about the deep state and what it was doing. And Fauci did a face plant on that one. Where he literally took his palm and put it up against the side of his face, like, "Oh, brother,"
Yeah.
And it became a meme, and so I'm sure Trump wasn't happy about that.
Yeah, no, he wasn't. And I think that's about the time we started seeing less of the good doctor. And I follow these things. Okay, I get those Tea Party emails I tell you everybody, and they're obsessively. I got to tell you, people, if you're not on these, if you're not on the mailing list, I have to just let Democrats know. Monroe, you're talking about, well, it's going to be a choice in November, regardless, and it's just you're going to get to vote against Donald Trump, even if it's for Joe Biden, you're going to get that opportunity. The Republicans are taking this very seriously. They are so many emails that I get on a regular basis, and I know if I'm getting them, then Trump supporters are getting them from Mitch McConnell. I mean, Newt Gingrich, Mitch McConnell, Trump's reelection.
We got them on the run. They're running scared. And this is what I see my spot out there on that limb, and I'm on my way there. But I'm predicting it's going to be a blue tsunami, and the Republicans are going to be wiped out. They're going to lose so many races. We're going to get the Senate back. We're going to keep the House. And we're going to get the White House.
Yeah. Well, wow, I'm going to hold you to that one. A clean sweep.
And then we're going to have to roll up our sleeves and try to undo all the mess that Trump has made.
All right. Now, speaking of which, you had a posting about a week ago that was very interesting. Let's talk about it. You asked the question, why do Democrats, why does the country still have faith in the Republican Party? And elect these presidents who are so incompetent in dealing with catastrophes and crises because they have so little faith in government to begin with. Talk about that issue.
Yeah, no. Well, you have Reagan, who Republicans worshipped until Trumpism hit him. And Reagan had Alzheimer's. He's at least pre-Alzheimer's, if not Alzheimer's, period. He took a lot of naps. And the government was mainly being run by Cheney and other evil people. And they don't believe in government. So anyway, we get through Reagan. And then we get Baby Bush. Daddy Bush was, except for Clarence Thomas and a couple of other things, wasn't too bad. but he wasn't great, but he wasn't horrible. But then we get Baby Bush, who doesn't know what he's doing, who hasn't a clue of what he's doing. And that's when we had Cheney. Sorry. Right? That's when we had Cheney running the thing and doing all kind of evil stuff. And Bush was sort of going along for his first term. And then he caught on and figured out that that wasn't the thing to do. But so he gives us the greatest recession next to the Great Depression. The one thing about Trump is that up until Trump got into office, my saying was that Bush was the worst president we ever had. Trump moved him out by a great distance for that worst president. And actually, I was exaggerating a little bit. Johnson was worse than Bush, too. Bush was the second or third worst president.
Well, I and that's a longer topic for another day. Dennis has been teasing me that I'm, because I'm wearing a red hat, that I'm feeling my inner Trump these days. George Bush got us involved in 2 wars that we're still not out of yet. And it's hard for me to overlook
That was
that.
Cheney and the neocons manipulating him.
Yeah. Well, whatever. He was the president who got us into the wars.
Yeah, because he wasn't that right, you know.
Yeah. And so it's hard for me
Like his
to.
mother and father said he was just adequate. And that's pretty bad when your parents say you're just adequate.
Well, my greater concern about where we're going as a country is that when I look at the Republican Party, each one of these presidents moves further and further away from what the center used to be in terms of what an attitude about government being for the common good of people and following policy.
Reagan.
Yeah,
that's Reaganism. Reagan started that.
Yeah.
And before Reagan became president, this country was a lot friendlier, and it wasn't holding poor people hostage and punishing them for being poor. They were vilified because they were poor. There was some empathy. We are now to a point where among many Americans, not all, but many, that if you're poor, it's your fault, and you have to live with it, and you can go someplace else if you want. But now what's happening with this crisis that we're now in is that where 40% of Americans don't have $400 in the bank as a fallback, we're all going to be socialists.
All right.
Which is what Trump is afraid of. Okay, you need to go to break. Okay.
Yeah, we need to go to break. Monroe, I want to thank you for being on. I know we're going to have to continue this conversation down the road. Definitely on the Joe Biden issue. I know I didn't convince you, and you didn't convince me yet, but maybe next week.
Okay, well, I will be. You just warned me about this morning. So next week I will be armed. I'm gonna be to Joe's defense.
All right.
I'm gonna come in defend him.
Good, because he's obviously incapable of defending himself. That's Monroe Anderson. Every Wednesday in the Ben Joravsky Show, legendary journalist Monroe Anderson, and he's keeping the tradition alive even in the era of coronavirus. We'll be right back with Loreen Targos after this.
So again, you know, how this spreads is through the close contact. You know, we've been teaching this from.
All right, everybody, we're going to go back to Mayor Lightfoot's speech. I believe it's still going on at the moment. Rumor has it here. Let me look and find it, and we'll go ahead and play this, and we'll be right back with Loreen Targos, everybody, so just hang tight.
Like no other time in our life. Now, in recent days, we have taken bold measures to expand our capacity to care for those impacted by COVID, allowing them to recover safely and to prevent the spread to others. By the end of this week, we will have expanded capacity to over 2,600 hotel rooms across the city, helping relieve pressure from our health and hospital systems. And again, I want to thank every single hospital, every single CEO and the staff who has stepped up to help in this time of need. In that same spirit, I want to take this opportunity to call on Chicagoans, particularly those who have health care and medical training. We need you now more than ever. Please consider volunteering and other employment opportunities available on our website. That's chicago.gov/coronavirus. If you are a doctor or a nurse's aide, or somebody with healthcare training, maybe even a student who's at one of our community colleges or in one of our hospitals around the city, we need you. We need you to step up right now in this time. We've got to have additional resources and volunteers. These volunteer and employment opportunities, as I said, include nurses, certified medical assistants, healthcare administrators, and more. If you have training in any aspect of delivery of healthcare services, we need you. These personnel are critical to ensure that we have the healthcare resources needed to manage the surge of patients that we anticipate in the coming weeks. Please go to, go here to chicago.gov/coronavirus, and we can set you up with training and help you staff one of the many different resources that we're bringing online. Now, also, we want to make sure that people are getting as informed as possible. You can do so at chicago.gov/coronavirus. And I've been deeply moved by the outreach and support that we've seen from so many people over these past few weeks. Just this morning, I was at the Greater Chicago Food Depository. There were probably 15 people of all stripes from all over our city who stepped up to volunteer to pack up boxes of food for residents that are in need. Now, whether from nonprofits providing critical food assistance to companies like Sitter City providing free childcare for our frontline workers, to our local hotels who have alleviated the strain on our hospitals by opening up space for individuals in isolation or quarantine, all of these actions matter and make a huge difference. But we need more help in order to succeed in our mission to bend the curve and break this crisis. Once again, those willing to volunteer, you can find opportunities online at chicago.gov/coronavirus. Finally, as always, I want to commend our incredible healthcare workers, first responders, and other city employees and essential businesses for their sacrifice and their work. We know that this is very difficult on you personally and your families, but we are grateful for you and the work that you're doing to keep this city strong in this very challenging time. These people have been our true heroes during this fight. Now, with that, I want to bring up our Public Health Commissioner, Dr. Allison Arwady, to provide updates and on the status of our public health response. Dr. Arwady.
Thank you, Mayor. So good afternoon, everyone. Those of you who have been following, every day at 11 a.m., I've been doing a Facebook Live, and we take questions from the public. We explain a little bit about our situation in Chicago. We talk about our Chicago data.
All right, we're going to try and play more of that, if there is more of that, later on today. Lori Lightfoot giving a speech, well, live right now at the moment. We're going to get hour number 2 of the program going here. Hour number 2 of your Ben Joravsky Show for Tuesday, March 25th. By the way, if you just tuned in, I have gloves. Taking care of myself, huh? Yeah. That's a great bit. Just this thing.
That thing. Do it again. Oh, yeah, I love when you do that thing.
I don't know why, but it's awesome. All right, hour number 2 is just moments away. But before we do this, we got to thank the following unions once again for jumping on board and sponsoring this program. Unions like, boy, these gloves. Turns out you can't really scroll on a computer with these gloves. Okay, unions like the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local 126 and District 8. The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9 are sponsors, as well as the International Unions of Operating Engineers, Local 150. A giant thank you to those unions for sponsoring this show. Thanks. Appreciate it. And, of course, today's Ben Joravsky Show. What's so funny?
Those little love when you go gloves. Do it again. Come on.
Well, I mean, after all this is over, maybe I'll just wear gloves every show. We'll have fun. You know what I mean?
Oh.
That was a real good one.
That was good. You get better at it.
The Chicago Federation of Labor sponsors as well. Hour number 2, let's go. It is Wednesday, March 25th, and live from Ben's house, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. Very nice attic he has. I wish you could all see it. In this hour of the program, one guest and one guest only, our good friend, EPA scientist, and political analyst, Loreen Targos. And now your host, Chicago Reader columnist Ben Joravsky.
In the attic we are. No train going by. It's really peaceful right now. just listening to Lori Lightfoot's comments and thoughts. And Dennis is the one who introduced this concept to me, and he's absolutely correct. It was a couple weeks ago, just the inconsistent messaging that's going out at this time. Lori Lightfoot talking about the need to bring in doctors to deal with the critical shortage of doctors. If you're retired doctors coming in, setting aside hotel rooms. We're going to have Loreen Targos. She has a lot of ideas on this front. EPA scientist Loreen Targos, a political activist Loreen Targos. She has a lot of thoughts on this. And at the same time, you have Donald Trump saying we should be going to church, having visions of packed churches in 3 weeks. We talked about this last week, where the governor Pritzker and Lori Lightfoot were just getting aboard on the notion that we need social distancing, that we have to stay at home, that we can't go to work, et cetera, and so forth. And then they were saying, go vote, hurry up and vote. The contradictory messages are just getting sent out all the time. And now there's the notion that what were you saying, the D? I missed the beginning where she was saying there's too many people going to the parks.
Well, the big takeaway here, everybody's saying that Lightfoot was talking about it. There's a lot of people like on the lakefront, like, everybody's like, go take a walk, do your thing. But when there's so many people taking a walk at the same time, now you have a social distancing issue, right? So I think they may be putting the hammer down a little more here on the going outside and taking a walk kind of.
Well, it's a beautiful day, and you're stuck inside, and you want to go get that fresh air, and you want to go for a walk, and they say, go for walks, that's good for you. Here's more inconsistencies. Go for a walk. Now they're saying, don't go for a walk.
Well, it's just the city of Chicago, and but they're trying, you know what I mean?
I know,
like,
it's tough times.
It's better than just doing absolutely nothing, which, by the way, if Bruce Rauner was still governor, that'd probably be what's going on. Horse pucky.
Well, no, Again, I said this yesterday. Yeah, I'm so relieved that Bruce Rauner was no longer our governor. And part of the problem is that he would be afraid to criticize Trump. He would be afraid to offer an alternative to Trump. And we were talking about this with Monroe, and he's absolutely correct. It's like the skillful nimbleness with which some politicians give and take when it comes to dealing with Trump. So, for instance, Cuomo today talked about, I'm going to speak up when I feel the need to. I'm going to use sharp elbows. I'm just going to play nice in the sandbox. But Monroe was correct. Earlier in the press conference or the press briefing, he was avoiding taking shots at Trump. And then yesterday we talked about this. J.B. Pritzker, after getting into a bit of a Twitter war with Trump, backed off and said, yeah, the president was very responsive on the phone. By the way, I don't know. We still haven't gotten the ventilators. And Cuomo was pointing out that they still haven't got the masks. So this notion, again, where you have to be so nice to Trump, you have to be so worried about his personal feelings, he's going to get mad at you, and he's going to tweet nasty things about you. So, if you're really nice to him, he may give you some of the things that you need. That's inconsistent, too, inconsistent messaging.
It is crazy, though, because like right here, I'm seeing ABC7 Chicago. Just in, Chicago scores an A in social distancing. Stay-at-home orders started last weekend, so we got an A in that. And now we're being told, hey, now we're doing, quit gathering. And then Trump's like, April 12th, we're going to be... No, it's all confusing, man.
It is confusing, and it's... As a longtime germaphobe, okay, I can just tell you this, folks. People in Chicago have very bizarre walking habits. Yeah. I've said this before. They just got a way of walking right at you. This is in general, anyway. Have you ever noticed this? I think we've discussed this on the air. It's one of my favorite topics. All right, so let's say this. Forget the coronavirus for the moment. You're walking down the sidewalk.
Try that, guys. Try everybody listening. Just try to forget about the coronavirus for a moment.
Let's just go back in the old days.
You're at home.
You're walking.
Wednesday, usually at work, but try not to think about it.
Yeah, just put it aside for the moment. Just think about this in the abstract. You're walking down the sidewalk. And let's say you're walking with them. Let's say Dennis and I are walking down the sidewalk. We're talking about the Bulls, okay? And then coming at us are two other people who are walking along, and they're talking about whatever. They're talking about the Bulls, too. We're all talking about the Bulls.
That's fantasy land.
By the way, we will be talking about the Bulls with Joe Cowley later today. I'm really looking forward to that. A break from coronavirus gate. Hey, put gate on that.
Don't worry, it's a bonus.
It's a bonus. Yeah. Our hired up political. Oh no, Bulls talk. Don't worry, it's a bonus. Anyway, so you're walking down the sidewalk. You're walking at it, and you know that at some point someone's going to have to move because there's not enough space on the sidewalk for all four people. This is things that go through my head. So who's going to move? Who's going to move, make the first move? And the other two people coming right at you, they're chatting away. So I always make a point, D. I step aside. I go, let you go. You can go. Usually, If the person's older than me, I'll say wisdom before youth. If the person's younger than me, I'll say beauty before age. You know, you just get to go because that's just like a common thing. You're walking. I always talk about my wife's. You know, people think I'm a little weird on this subject. Yeah, maybe I am, but.
Well, you can take on this subject out of that sentence.
So I just noticed that. Now, I figure, well, now in the age of the coronavirus, where we're being cautioned about walking closely to one another, that we're being advised to keep 6 feet apart, that people be more aware of it. They just walking like magnets, walking right at you. You know, dude, you're coming right at me. I'm going right. You're coming. And I would love to hear Lori Lightfoot address that issue, walking down the sidewalk issue.
Well, give it time. I'm sure she will. All right. We got Loreen Targos coming up in minutes here. But first, before we do that, Ben, there's the brown line. All right.
You're right. It's going too fast.
It's like our additional co-host with an attic here. Before we get to Loreen Targos, we got to give a little shout out, Ben. That's right. Former Illinois gubernatorial candidate Chris Kennedy. We haven't heard from him in a while.
Not heard from him in a long time.
First off, it's good to know he's doing okay. We haven't heard from him in a while here, and we got to hand it to old Kennedy. He's the founder of a company called Top Box Foods. It's a national nonprofit hunger relief program that provides food to communities in need. Kennedy is now leading the effort to have Top Box deliver food to Chicagoans directed to stay inside. Kennedy said, quote, "We want to offer another solution. There are people sheltering in place who have medical conditions that don't allow them to go out. We're helping them double down on caution by delivering to their doors. So far, Top Box is delivering to a few hundred people this week and will work up to delivering more in the coming weeks. The nonprofit works with food distributors and hasn't faced any issues of food shortages." Well, that is until we talk about it on the Ben Joravsky show. People are going to be going to Top Box like crazy. The Illinois political bulldogs over at Illinois Politico had to ask Kennedy about that 2018 gubernatorial election, an election where Kennedy kind of went hard in the paint on then candidate J.B. Pritzker. Did he not, Ben?
Oh, he went strong at him, yeah.
What was Chris Kennedy saying about Pritzker? I can't really remember.
Well, God, that was a different universe, a different political universe, a different political reality 2 years ago in roughly around this time, a little before, because the primary was March of 2018. Chris Kennedy was saying that J.B. Pritzker was part of the corrupt Democratic machine, and he was attacking the corrupt Democratic machine. We needed a break from it. And a very bizarre position for someone named Kennedy to take, you know, because obviously that Democratic machine was responsible for Kennedy getting elected president in the first place. John Kennedy getting elected in 1960, a corrupt Democratic machine, finding votes in the wee hours that they needed to bring Illinois into the Kennedy fold, get those electoral votes for Kennedy. I would argue that the greater corruption took place in Texas, where LBJ found the votes, and Robert Caro has chronicled this in his biographies of Lyndon Johnson, found the votes like literally, I don't know, in a basement somewhere. But so it's interesting that Chris Kennedy would attack the Democratic Party that helped his uncle get elected president and is so much part of that legacy. But it was also kind of a desperate tack for Chris Kennedy because it didn't really work, obviously. It just sort of alienated him from some of the supporters he might have needed. And, of course, Democrats bought into the notion that we need a billionaire to beat a billionaire, and he was unable to overcome and defeat Pritzker. But I found it very unusual that somebody named Kennedy would be attacking the Democratic Party.
Well, time heals all wounds. It's all water under the bridge now, because though they haven't spoke since the primary, Kennedy says that there is, quote, no animosity or bad blood between him and his former rival, now Governor J.B. Pritzker. He said, quote, "I'm glad a Democrat is in charge of leading the state. The General Assembly got a lot done in that first legislative session."
Yeah, well, it's, when he was making those attacks, I had a hard time believing that was really deep inside of him, something that he believed, that's like a hardcore belief that he had. It was almost as like a tactical decision that he was going to sort of distinguish himself as a reformer to contrast himself with Pritzker because he wasn't going to get the support of the party. That was kind of my cynical take of it. But I will always appreciate Chris Kennedy for another position he took that had nothing to do with J.B. Pritzker, and God, this is ancient history, but it had to do with what's been going on in the city of Chicago for the last 30 years. And he was very forthright. He said that planning decisions by Rahm Emanuel were intended to drive black people out of the city of Chicago. And we could quibble over the word intended, whether that was specifically what Rahm wanted to do, but I don't think there's any argument that those planning decisions led to the massive, in part, were the reason why so many black people left the city of Chicago, why there's so many poor and working class and middle class people could no longer find Chicago affordable. So I've always will appreciate him for making those comments in the heat of that campaign.
All right, I'm going to try my best to get some audio or at least get some quotes from Lightfoot, her press conference today. Let's go ahead and reach out to Loreen Targos now. Call her up. My favorite part of this broadcast when we just call people up live.
This is on Facebook.
This is Facebook.
The Facebook phone.
It's good times, right?
Yeah.
All right, great.
It's always interesting seeing if people, it's like, do they put their phone down and forget about it?
Here we go. Loreen?
Hello.
All right.
Yeah, let me get you on my headphones.
All right.
Oh, you sound clear. You sound very clear, Loreen.
Awesome.
You have your headphones on?
I do.
All right. Well, thank you for finding time for us today. I thought it would be a good idea to reach out to you on several fronts. You are a political activist. You're a Bernie Sanders supporter. Your husband is Byron Sixer Lopez, the alderman in the 25th Ward, and you yourself are a scientist for the EPA. So you know what it's like to be a scientist working for Donald Trump. So a lot to cover, a lot to talk about. Let's just start with being a scientist working for Donald Trump. And just your experiences at the EPA. Talk about the pressures that scientists and doctors are under in the Trump administration to hew to a certain administrative policy.
Right. So it's really, it's been interesting to watch, and, speaking in my personal capacity, of course, it's been interesting to watch how, people at high levels are kind of having to accommodate to Trump's, belligerency and that type of thing. And let me get this dog. Hold on one second.
Is that Byron? Hey.
Yeah. That's this dog. I'm gonna feed it because it's gonna go crazy this whole time. 1 second.
All good. Byron Lopez making an appearance.
He loves coming on the show.
Holy cow. You good, Loreen?
Back in. Yep.
Cool.
All right.
Okay, go
Sorry
ahead.
about that. So the president has clearly he has expectations for the people who are high up in his agencies, and you see that with this this doctor who's the head of the infectious diseases group, Fauci, who has to balance the information that he's trying to spread about the most critical health pandemic of our generation, and also not displeasing Trump and so whenever Trump says these things like, oh, we're going to be out by Easter, he has to sort of spin it as like, oh, well, that's just the president being optimistic versus, what it really is doing is making this much more dangerous for everybody, because there's no telling, there's no age limit that is safe from this disease. Of course, it disproportionately affects people with compromised immune systems and compromised lung health and older age. But it's, people of all ages have been dying. There was an assistant principal of a high school in New York City who died from it. She was 34 years old, no health problems that we knew of. And he's saying that we're all going to be out by Easter, which is an actual scientist is horrified at that. But Dr. Fauci and others who sort of put on this brave face to still stay in the administration as an expert.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting line that they have to walk.
And again, Loreen is speaking only for Loreen, and she's also a member of a union that will protect. We always have to say this. talk about our First Amendment rights in this country. Whenever you come on the show, Loreen, you are speaking for yourself. You're not in any way speaking for the EPA, and you are protected by your union on this front. So, are there examples of that for EPA workers and scientists as well, even before this crisis?
Definitely, there's been cases where I had a colleague who in the previous administration had been working on climate change policy to some degree. I don't know the specifics, but that scientist has been reassigned to do other work. Climate change just isn't really part of the priorities.
Climate change is not part of the priority. Do you see a similarity toward their attitude to climate change, toward their attitude toward dealing with the coronavirus?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really, yeah, there's even now, as we see, in addition to dealing with this coronavirus, which is going to go on for weeks, months, who knows, we're going to be dealing with the impacts of climate change coming up. There's going to be, last spring we saw a lot of flooding through the center of the United States. We're going to see that same type of flooding this spring as well. There's going to be more rain as predicted by climate change. There's going to be more flooding. And then what does multiple national emergencies look like on top of each other? These are the types of crises we're going to have to deal with in the United States and across the globe as climate change continues to escalate. You're going to have wildfires coming in the fall. What if there's, like the Spanish flu, like a second bump in the fall? How are we going to deal with tens of thousands of millions of people displaced because of wildfires, or people displaced because of tornadoes or floods? And then you have people who, on top of that, have to be isolated because of coronavirus. Are we building the housing that's necessary? Are we stopping the mortgage payments? Are we preventing evictions? All of those things are not happening right now in the United States. And so how can we even begin to talk about what really taking this seriously is going to look like when everyone who's controlling the narrative on this has these competing interests that don't appear to center the American working class?
Talk about that. Competing interests. What do you mean by that, the competing interests?
Well, Naomi Klein's shock doctrine, 10 or 11 or 12 years ago, talked about, and Rahm Emanuel was famous for saying, never let a good crisis go to waste. And we're seeing now with the bailout package that the Trump White House and the Senate agreed on, there are crazy bailouts for corporations and piecemeal little crumbs left over for working class people and small businesses and homeowners and regular people. So even people who classify themselves as capitalists, who might be bourgeois and think that the government cares about them because they're middle class, hardworking, people who make $80,000 a year maybe, they're also being left behind by this bailout, and it's clearly only to serve the capitalist 1%, the people who could take your house if you miss your next mortgage payment.
Yeah, and there was, and it would probably. I have not read the specifics of the bill. I was talking to you about this briefly, but the Democrats did win some concession on the Senate bill from the White House in terms of protecting the amount of money that goes to corporations, and also to limiting the amount of money that Donald Trump businesses could get. I don't know if you saw that, but that that Trump hotels could get from it. But we don't know the exact extent of the protections. We don't know the specifics. We're gonna have to study this bill.
There's a really good article. There's a really good article that came out in the American Prospect by David Daden called "Unsanitized Bailouts: A Tradition Unlike Any Other." And in there, and I'm seeing now on Twitter from people who are reading over it, there were some good things in there, definitely. Unemployment was expanded to include tips and gig workers. That was something that Bernie specifically specified in his plan. That got added in. But those are crumbs compared to what's coming out about the bailout. For example, the Democrats wanted more oversight of this, slush fund that's being given to big businesses, which is going to be given through the Fed for Treasury Secretary Mnuchin to distribute as he likes. That's the Democrats got them to concede, quote unquote, and have an IG and a panel of 5 people oversee like this multi-trillion-dollar loan program that they're going to have. That was the exact same concession they got in 2009, I believe, and that really did not work very well. So it's pretty much it has no protections that you would think we would get given the narrative in this country right now. So when you talk about competing interests, for example, like small businesses are going to get a few $100 billion to do loans, but that only kicks in if they keep their workers on the payroll, which of course is important. That also requires them to not interfere with union organizing. That's awesome. That's important. The big businesses, they get trillions of dollars, not billions of dollars. They get trillions of dollars of loans, and they do not have to keep their workers on the payroll. They do not have to make sure that people are being able to unionize in a neutral space. All of those things do not apply to big businesses. And they also can use this loan money to buy other businesses. So these small businesses that are struggling and barely getting by with this little loan that from the federal government, they're going to be bought at a premium by these big businesses and they can fire everybody, and there's no restriction on that. So that's just like one example of how we're getting screwed.
And yet we're supposed to, for the good of the country, come together and smile and say this is evidence of government working together by bipartisan effort by Republicans and Democrats to work together to help everybody and preserve everybody. I have a hard time towing that line, Loreen. I've always had a hard time doing it here in the city of Chicago, the state of Illinois, but particularly now in this crisis, it's a very difficult thing for me to sign on to.
Yeah, there's no bipartisan support of the working class. They're bipartisanly opposed to us, and they will, it's kind of like we've been conditioned to always think the best of these people. These politicians are nice if you meet them, they're congenial. But the fact is they don't work for us. They don't care for us, and it's going to take courage of our leaders from the working class who, claim to be for us. Bernie Sanders, the squad, are they going to step forward? Is Liz Warren going to step forward and call this out? I haven't heard her. And, are these people going to step up? And is it going to take like the working class? Like you're seeing these little things of hope within the working class, like Amazon workers here in Chicago, were the leaders in fighting for some sick leave from Amazon. That was something that they weren't required to provide under President Trump because they're a big business. McDonald's workers, they still haven't given their workers paid sick leave, which is insane. And, the working class is, there's a Domino's I've heard in California that stopped. They walked out because they weren't being given paid sick leave. Philadelphia sanitation workers walked off the job, demanding more sanitary things like masks and gloves to be able to do their work, to continue picking up trash in Philadelphia. So I think it's going to take courage from regular people that's going to save us from this, because we're not seeing it. And the media is spinning this as like, oh, wow, we took Bernie's unemployment thing for workers, which is pennies compared to what the slush fund is going to be for these big businesses to go up and buy all the small businesses, the little restaurant that we like on the corner. They're going to buy that and turn it into profit for a very small percentage of Americans.
When I hear you talk, Loreen, and I realize that voices like yours are outside of the mainstream. I mean, what you're saying makes so much sense. I agree with you. But we're outside of the mainstream. I don't get the sense that the political view that you're espousing right here, the worldview that you're espousing right here, is being represented in the halls of Congress right now.
Right. It's not. And that's the thing. Like, we need to really think about what it looks like. And I think courage is the big part of it. I think it's a matter of, people like you providing a platform for these voices to get out there so that, people can, push through the propaganda that we have of everyone telling us, oh, this is a good bill, oh, bipartisan, oh, that's great. And I think that's already happening. Some social scientist of some kind talked about like a breaking point or something where, if you look at the normal distribution of a society, you have like the early adopters, and those might be, if you're talking about like what we're talking about like working class power, that type of thing. That's not a very popular thing in the mainstream narrative. But because of Bernie Sanders' campaign, because of, organizing all over the country, Occupy Wall Street, to now talking about inequality, I think it's possible that we're reaching a breaking point. And that's the only place I put my hope, is that there's enough people who are reading through the lines. They understand that when it comes from CNN, it's on CNN because the corporate overlords of CNN are okay with that message. They don't believe that message is going to jeopardize their fortunes. And so people are looking elsewhere for media to find the truth of what's going on. And this pandemic is sort of laying the carcass of capitalism wide open. We have nurses still today on March 25th who are pleading for masks in our hospitals. How could that be in a country that claims to care about nurses who are the epitome of like American bootstrap perfectness? How can we not be giving them N95 masks in every hand if this is the greatest country in the world? And meanwhile, Congress is debating about trillions in bailouts for these big businesses who, what are we going to get from that? Nothing. It's a Ponzi scheme.
Oh, yeah. Congress is debating setting aside $500 billion. Good God, just think about this. Like I say this all the time, Loreen. $500 billion. We didn't have enough money for nurses in the public schools just 3 months ago.
That $500 billion is going to be leveraged in the Fed to loan out the $4.25 trillion. So it's not just $500 billion. The $500 billion is there to absorb the losses. It is us socializing the losses for what they're going to be doing with this money. So as they, like, let's say I gave you like $100 million loan bill, Ben, to you, and put it in your pocket and was like, yeah, go out, buy up all the businesses, do what you will with all that money to get our economy going again. And then one of your 500 ventures goes bad, then that's going to come out of the loss that we socialize through the Fed. You don't have to take on that loss. The government's going to take on that loss. And the profit that you get, it's probably going to 99% go to your pocket, because Steve Mnuchin, if you look, Section 2 gives all these restrictions, and Section 3 of the bill gives Steve Mnuchin, or Treasury Secretary Mnuchin, the power to change the restrictions as he sees fit. So if I gave you this $100 million loan and said, oh, wait, you can't use that loan to buy dividends to your shareholders, he can be like, well, in Ben's case, we can, because whatever justification. And there's no checks and balances on that.
Meanwhile, while this is going on, just to follow up, tie it all together, they're incapable of getting masks to hospitals in Chicago and New York or throughout the country.
That's right. And in New York, my God, New York State has half the cases of the country. And, the people aren't necessarily all staying home. And so it's going to be a disaster there.
And so that gets me to the political question. We'll come back to Chicago. Don't forget it. I've got some Chicago questions for you as well, Loreen. But the larger political question, I've been struggling with this because you just laid it out, Loreen. You just laid it out. That they're moving forward to spend trillions, hundreds of billions of dollars propping up big businesses at the same time that Donald Trump is telling us, oh, we're going to be back to normal by Easter in 3 weeks. Churches will be packed. I can't wait to see that site. Churches will be packed. What a bizarre notion to put out there.
We're going to be... That's the scary thing. We're going to be, if we look at what's happening across the world, I don't even want to say this, but it's true. We will be stacking bodies 3 weeks from now. And it's so scary to think about what's coming. And we're already seeing vibrant, amazing people of all ages dying from this disease. And, it's really... as those stakes are rising, as the most beloved people in our world are like vanishing from our families, the 1% still can't come together and join us as the 100% to like save society. There is still that divide that preserves inequality. Why? Why is that happening? And we cannot allow it to happen, you know?
All right. So where I was going with this is my personal belief is that at this moment, the Democratic Party, which is so critical for our future, is very feeble in its response. That's just my personal belief. I'm very disappointed. On some levels, I have to laugh at it when I listen to some of the things that Joe Biden says, and he is probably going to be the nominee. It's so feeble, and there's no leader. There's like you have Pritzker here in Illinois making his pleas for Illinois. You have Cuomo in New York making his pleas for New York. But it's not as though they're joining forces and talking about like the entire United States. So I'm asking, what would you like to hear the leaders of the Democratic Party saying at this moment?
I mean, if this was the world that the media paints for us, that Joe Biden is the leader and he will be an amazing leader because the Democrats are great and they're not like the Republicans, then we would see Joe Biden stepping up in front of an American flag and demanding that Trump help the working class right now. He would show you, introduce you to people who are suffering and lay out a plan for what we need. And instead, we have silence and a dereliction of duty by the entire Democratic Party. They wanted this power. Now they have this power, and they're not doing anything with it. So you have these, scattershot of governors trying to do their best, but we don't have a leader stepping forward and challenging the narrative that Trump is putting out there. And that's why you're seeing his approval ratings skyrocket right now. But he's at 60% for his handling of the coronavirus right now. Popular opinion says 60% approve.
I missed the 60% one. That must be a new poll that I didn't see. But I know there's a tendency of people to, when in moments of crisis, to rally around the leader, no matter who the leader is. That's just a reflex that people have. I've been feeling a little bit of that when I criticize, not so much when I criticize Trump, but when I dare to criticize Biden for not being more critical of Trump. The notion is that it's a moment of crisis. We have to rally around the president. I find that really difficult to defend when I see the president being so irrational as to say things like, we'll be all back together in packed churches on April 12th in 3 weeks. I find it a little hard just to say, I'm just going to blindly rally around a president who is giving out such bad advice and such misinformation, Loreen. So I guess I just not with the mainstream on that one, but I didn't see the 60%.
Yeah, I mean, it's rising all the time, and I don't remember the source of that poll, but I saw it somewhere today. And what you're seeing, like, if let's see a leader step out there and give an alternative vision for this is what we should be doing, this is who we should be protecting, this is who we care about, and this is how we're going to do it, and lay out the strategy. And it's easy for me to say, but we're seeing Bernie Sanders do that to the best ability, the best way he can. He's holding town halls every night. He's giving people an understanding of what the solutions look like. Well, even if we're not getting them, we know the path that we need to go.
Yeah. Well, by the way, I should stop saying that Joe Biden has wrapped up the nomination. He hasn't. Some of the primaries have been pushed off. Not a lot of talk about the Democratic primary and the whole process. Maybe we'll have some break or relief by June, and it'll be back on people's mind. I know that some of the primaries have been rescheduled for June, so there'll be the schedule, the calendar is off. So maybe it's just presumptuous of me to act as though I expect more from Joe Biden, because he's not even the nominee yet. But I'm very disappointed with the Democratic Party in general, and Joe Biden in particular. Let's switch it to the local level here in the city of Chicago. There was an article in the newspaper I saw the other day. I mean, shaking my head. It has to do with something going on in your neck of the woods. You are in your husband is the alderman of the 25th ward, and that is the ward in which one of the biggest TIF-funded deals is going down in the city of Chicago, the 78. And there was an article in the paper that the 78, which is a massive project that'll be just south of Roosevelt Road. Just talking about it, just the good old days, Loreen, issues that I used to talk about all the time, is underway, that the 78 is underway. And I saw this, and I'm like, I have my issues with the 78 anyway, to begin with. It's spending all that money on that project, but putting aside whether it's a good idea or not, I was a little caught off guard that in the middle of the coronavirus scare, they're undergoing this massive redevelopment plan. Don't you think there's better uses of the money, the time, the resources, and those workers?
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of just like nothing changes. They're trying to, the money's been guaranteed, and I'm sure, in a different reality, the mayor could say, we're going to cancel that and find a way to make it legal and direct all that money to a relief package. But of course, that's not going to happen. And I don't even know if that would be legal to do. But, if I had a law department that I could go to with all my crazy ideas, I would do that and just be like, hey, here's my crazy idea. Is this legal? And they would say no, or we would strategize about how that happened. But, it's kind of wild. They're continuing with the project. I think a lot of construction projects have been continuing in the city of Chicago, but this one in particular was kind of like, I guess people thought that it might be held up in the same way that everything else in the status quo is being held up, but that hasn't been the case. There is sort of like a community, there's going to be a community panel that oversees this project. I don't know if there were some stories about it maybe like a month or so ago. And the panel hasn't had a chance to physically convene, but I know for the 78, it will include, I think a majority of the people sitting on the panel are residents of the 25th, 3rd, or 4th wards. So there will be local input from people who had to sign a form saying they don't have a conflict of interest financially with the city or with the developer. So hopefully there can be some real accountability, even if, the overarching picture is that we would rather have that money spent someplace else.
How would you, if you could, if you were the mayor of the city of Chicago, you had a magic wand, what would you see the city doing to deal with the coronavirus scare?
I think what they're doing in terms of the briefings with, I think the public health commissioner seems to have a good understanding of what the problem is. I probably, I like how they're working together with the governor's office. I know the governor's office has been really responsive with all sorts of things. I think they're just on a mission to procure masks. I know one kind of little inside story. There's all these small business owners in Chinatown who they have a lot of connections to the old country, and they've already have shipments of masks coming to Chicago, and they're telling Byron, the alderman, that they're going to donate a bunch to him so that we can distribute them to the local health centers and that type of thing. And so I'd be working to shore up those kinds of protections, is like making sure everyone has masks and pushing at whatever level I need to get mortgage and rent and unemployment relief for every person, and then working to commandeer the hotels and those types of places so that we can house people who are homeless, people who need to be quarantined because they're sick and in a situation where there's not enough space to quarantine within the home that they have. And also for people who are dealing with domestic violence and need to get away. I mean, that's been a story that's kind of been on the fringes of the narratives because there's so many other crazy things going on. But for somebody who deals with domestic abuse or there are abused children in the house, to be trapped with your abuser, for that person, that's the greatest crisis in their life, not the coronavirus, which may not be affecting them yet. And it'd be great to see a response where every hotel was deemed eligible to be commandeered and put aside to make sure that all the most vulnerable people can survive this in a healthy and safe and dignified way.
You know, Loreen, when you mentioned Chinatown, it brought back a conversation that we had, God, it seems like in another lifetime, about doing more to promote business in Chinatown because so many people initially, when the word came out that there was this coronavirus in China, they stopped going to Chinatown. This is even before there were cases, I think, in the city of Chicago, very early on. Donald Trump, for so long, called it the Chinese virus. And I guess yesterday he didn't call it that, so people were saying, "Oh, maybe he's dropping this." Who knows how he's going to deal with it tomorrow? Maybe he'll go back to it tomorrow. You never know with Donald Trump. The same Donald Trump who somehow or other is rising in the polls, even though he calls it the Chinese virus. Talk a little bit about what do you think he's up to when he calls the virus? He links it directly to China.
Well, one thing he does have mastery of is the manipulation of the media cycle, right? And that's something that people really underestimate the power of. But when you are able to harness it, you command great power. I think that's probably why he was able to become president, because he is such a clown show and people follow him. And the media follows him, and then suddenly, oh my God, he became elected because we gave him all this free press. And you saw, after South Carolina, all the press, I think there was like hundreds of millions of dollars of free, quote unquote, earned media for Joe Biden. And then they wonder, oh, how did Joe Biden win a state that he had no campaign in? He had no staff on the ground. Well, of course, because earned media is a very valuable thing. And so that's what Trump's doing, I think, with this Chinese thing. I mean, if we can talk about how he's racist to Chinese people, then we're not talking about helping the working class. We're not talking about what we need to do to, how we need to model after Singapore or all these countries that were able to stop the virus in its tracks. We're not talking about the solutions to problems. We're talking about, a circus. So that might be part of it, I think. I saw he sent out a tweet yesterday saying Asian Americans are great. It's not their fault that this is coronavirus. And it's a really harmful and painful distraction that has real world consequences for Asian American people who are being violently attacked in some cases. And I'm sure the kids are being taunted. I mean, we remember after 9/11 how, George Bush told people not to attack Muslim people, but, Muslim kids experienced a lot of bullying in schools after, and I believe that's the case right now with kids of Asian descent, East Asian descent.
Yeah, it's so bizarre. He'll routinely call it the Chinese virus or what have you. There was a picture of him have scratched out his speech, his remarks. The Washington Post photographer took a photo over Trump's shoulder, so you saw the remarks. He edited it, and he took out coronavirus and wrote Chinese, and then he sends out a tweet. It's like, you know what I'm saying? Talk about mixed message. Like, oh yeah, no, yeah, I love Asian Americans.
Yeah, and it's the same thing he plays with every marginalized ethnic group that he uses as a thing to dehumanize and toy with. It's like an evil bully that's like putting a magnifying glass on an ant or something. It's like, my God, stop! Why are you doing this?
I think
he can't logic with it. It's just, yeah, he does know what he's doing.
Yes, I do. I think he does know what he's doing, and we make fun of him. I'm certainly at the top of the list of making fun of Donald Trump and the weird things he says. But yes, he knows what he's doing. He got elected president. He's at 55% at least in the polls right now. So anyway, Loreen, we're going to let you go. I want to thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us. I appreciate you coming on the show, even now from your house.
Thank you both for having me. Yeah. Thank you both for having me, and thank you for continuing to put the word out.
Very good. Loreen Targos, a EPA scientist, a political activist. I'm not sure she is chief of staff. No, she's not chief of staff, but she's very close.
Well, we just promoted her. She's chief of staff.
Give her a job. Yeah, hey, I thought she did a very good job of saying why Democrats might want to rethink. Okay, just rethink. The message they're putting out here in this day and age, this day and age where Donald Trump is the president and giving all sorts of insane, conflicting messages. while he's rising in the polls.
All right, we got some updates here. Right now, I'm taking a look. J.B. Pritzker's about to give his press conference. Right now, the tallest man in Springfield is giving a speech. One Will Gazzardi. Good Lord, this guy's tall.
Get him the ball.
Holy cow. And shout out to the sign language guy during all these Pritzker press conferences. This guy's a hustler. My goodness. He's doing a great job. Take a lunch, sir. You're doing well. Pritzker hasn't spoken yet. Oh, there you go, Ben. Ben's trying to look at him.
I'm trying to see if I recognize the guy.
All right. So, Lori Lightfoot. We have details on Lori Lightfoot on what she said here. The following comes from the Chicago Sun-Times, and if you thought this lady was taking a break, oh, you're sadly mistaken. Fran Spielman. Yeah. Hustler, Fran. All right. She writes here, Mayor Lori Lightfoot on Wednesday made an extraordinary threat to shut down Chicago parks and the entire lakefront if residents and visitors continue to thumb their noses at Governor J.B. Pritzker's stay-at-home aimed at slowing the spread of the coronavirus, the stay-at-home order. Lightfoot instructed Chicago police officers to shut down large gatherings and threatened to use what she called, quote, every lever at my disposal to compel compliance. She was moved to action by the large gatherings that she saw along the lakefront, the crowds at Chicago playgrounds and basketball courts, and the warm weather luring stir-crazy Chicagoans outside, even though they're supposed to be staying at home. Here's the quote from Lightfoot. Quote, way too many people gathering like it's just another day. This is not just another day, and no day will be just another day until we are on the other side of this virus, which is weeks away, the mayor said. She continued by saying, I understand people are frustrated at being stuck in their homes and anxious to get outside and move around, and you can do that. But you must do it in a way that is smart, that is maintaining social distance and not congregating in other locations with lots of other people. That's where the danger lies. Lightfoot said she not only has directed Chicago police officers to shut down large gatherings, but also is prepared to go even further. She continues in saying, quote, if we have to, because you are not educating yourselves into compliance, and if you're not abiding by these very clear but necessary stay-at-home orders, we will be forced to shut down parks and the entire lakefront. Let me be clear, Lightfoot says. That's the last thing any of us want, and that's the last thing that I want to do as mayor. But make no mistake, if people don't take this in a serious way, in which they must, I'm not going to hesitate to pull every lever at my disposal to force compliance if necessary. But let's not get to that point. We don't need to. Stay at home. Only go out for the essentials. If you want to exercise, do it in a way that you're not congregating with other people.
Well, listen, if it's a problem, you shut it down. I just listened to that quote. Listen, it's very difficult to stay inside all day, particularly when it's really nice out. And when, again, mixed messaging, D. They tell you, go take a walk, get some exercise. It's good for your body. It'll help you stay healthy, you know. And so on one hand, they're saying, go out, get some exercise. On the other hand, they're saying, don't congregate at the parks. If it's a real problem and it's gorgeous and it's attraction, then you should shut them down. I mean, the messaging, listen, I don't pretend this is easy. Obviously, this is a hugely challenging moment. But just got finished talking to Loreen Targos. You know, they're continuing a construction project at the 78. How is that at the top of the priorities in the city of Chicago right now? How is that good for the people who work on that project? We just send out so many mixed messages. So, okay, voluntarily stay away from the park while it's absolutely gorgeous. You're like a kid looking across the street. You know what I'm saying? That it's just so tantalizing to go outside. But you know, we don't want to close the parks because that sends a bad message. But we don't want you to go into the park. Well, maybe if it's really dangerous, maybe you should close the parks. But I don't know, D, the messaging, you pointed this out last week, and you're absolutely correct. It's so mixed. It's so contradictory. It varies from one leader to the next. You got Donald Trump talking about packed churches by April 12th. You have Lori Lightfoot warning us not to go into the park on this absolutely gorgeous day when everybody wants to go to the park.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I appreciate the effort. You know what I mean? I'm glad we're doing something, right?
Yeah, because the alternative is the spread of this disease. If we believe the doctors, if we believe the scientists, and apparently not everybody does believe them,
Our president.
Our president,
Good Lord.
who's rising in the polls, even though he doesn't believe or doesn't consistently articulate the words of warning that his own scientists are giving, then we should, be staying in our homes. But then again, they say, hey, get out, get some fresh air. So I know this, D, since this coronavirus has forced us into our little attic here, and I do not routinely leave the house to go to the Sun-Times like we did for over a year, I really appreciate taking a walk. So, God, if they started banning that, I think I'd lose my freaking mind.
Yeah,
I've
wondered about that though. The lakefront's always packed, and so everybody's got the right idea. They want to go out, but it turns out there's like millions of people that live here. So,
well, I talked about this already. I was there yesterday. I'm guilty of it. I was there. I was at the lakefront yesterday. Although it was when I was at I shouldn't even say what beach I was at. D. They'll probably come in and arrest me. But I was at a beach. I walked to a beach. I'm not going to say which beach. It was completely empty when I was there. So yesterday wasn't as nice as today. It was sunny, but it was cold. Today is warm, so it's probably going to be a lot of people there. But yeah, some common sense on the part of people. The whole notion of social distancing and protecting one another is rooted in having some basic semblance of common sense. So again, when you walk like four abreast right at someone, you know what I'm saying? What do you my Ken Davis moment. What are you expecting that person to do? So my case, I would have to run to the do a quick left or
run,
quick
don't
right.
walk?
You run, not run, don't walk to get away from the people coming at me. So yeah, there's some common sense you can employ. But you know what, Lori Lightfoot? I guess if you feel as though that this is a crisis.
I mean, who would have thought? Going into being a
beach.
mayor, one of the issues you'd have to deal with is this. This is insane. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. I hear you.
You got the teachers union strike and all that, and dealing with all that. And then about a year later, social distancing is going to be something you're going to have to deal with.
Well, first of all, there was no need for that teacher strike. You know what? I would like to relitigate the teacher strike because that was something that was within the realm of, it wasn't as scary as we're at now, but there was no reason to have that teacher. That's a whole other story. By the way, and I love pointing out, the teachers went on strike to get more nurses in our public school. That was one of the top issues that they raised. And we were saying, we don't have enough money for more nurses in our public school. And the headline, I'm looking at it, $2 trillion deal nearing. And as Loreen Targos pointed out, hundreds of billions of that money will be going to corporations that already got a tax break in the last tax bill that Donald Trump passed through the Senate and the House. So I'm just pointing out, folks, that these crises that we hear about from time to time, probably artificial and man-made. And yet we're supposed to believe our governor and our mayor and our president whenever they tell us, this is true. What I'm saying is really true. This is a crisis. Don't go to the park. Don't go to the beach.
Yeah, I've been riding my bike every day, but I don't go down to the lakefront. You know what I mean? For that issue, I'm like, I bet there's going to be a ton of people there. I ride my bike more northwest. If I see a bunch of people going on my trail,
well, the same thing. You ride on a trail, and it's been cool, and I appreciate the fact that you do it. I'm a little envious of you. Dennis gets up early in the morning, folks, unlike me, sleeping until 10, and he goes out for a bike ride. But as the weather gets nice, those trails that you're on will have more bicyclists on it. It'll be harder to keep the social distance that they say we need. And you know how bicyclists get? They just they come right into your space all the time. And so, you'll probably be violating all the protocol that they're recommending that we follow when it gets really nice out. So that's the reality of the situation. It's like, in some ways, it's a vacation or a staycation because you're not going to work. So it's inviting to go outside. And on the other hand, you're not supposed to go outside. But again, the messaging is so mixed, D. You pointed that out more than once. The messaging is so mixed, it's hard to take any of them serious.
All right, everybody. J.B. Pritzker is giving his speech. Go watch that, all right? We're not going to play it here on the show. Hopefully we'll talk about it tomorrow. Boy, that sign language guy is hustling. Look at that, Ben. Look at this guy going.
Oh, yeah.
Whoa. Do you know who that person is?
That's not the same guy. There's there's obviously more than one sign language guys, but there's a couple of sign language people who work the lakefront festivals. God, speaking of which, the Grant Park Music Festivals and the Millennium Park Music Festivals. I wonder if those will happen. I doubt it. But anyway, so it's one of my favorites is to watch them. They really go at it when sometimes trying to interpret like a rap song is really hard. You know what I'm saying? You got to really move fast. But no, I was just thinking, is it the same dude that's at Millennium Park? But no.
And we'd have him on the show, but I don't know. Like, number one, I don't know if that'd be an entertaining interview, really.
Actually, I've always wanted to have the sign interpreter from the Millennium Park music festivals on the show to interview. I've always thought that would be interesting to hear, what's at stake. How do you know? I mean, I can barely even hear the words of a song that the singer's singing. How does this dude know what to do it in real time for sign language? Does he know the song already? Did they go through the lyrics?
Wow.
All kinds of interesting things to ask these people.
Wow. All right. Well, hey, we're done.
Play the radio. Make sure the television, make sure you have the record player on at night. The phone. Make sure the kids hear words.
There's our guy, huh, D? There's our guy. Hey, got to fall in line. Monroe told me, fall in line, support him, okay? A lot of my centrist Democratic friends are saying, support Joe Biden no matter what. Anyway, I want to thank Monroe Anderson, Loreen Targos for coming by, and of course, the man, the myth, the legend, the pride and joy of Alton, Illinois. We couldn't do it without him. Back home in Alton, they call him White Lightning. Take care, everybody. See you tomorrow.
Hey, and remember, you can download these shows at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites and wherever else you download your favorite podcast. Downloaders, give us a try on the live stream sometime, huh? It's interesting, I'll tell you that. I don't know if it's great, but it's interesting. You can join the live stream chat as well. Hang out with Brianna. Steven's back. What's up, Steven? Michael. Jim, new to the live stream chat. Hang out with like-minded political people and a few trolls. It's a good time. Oh, there's the brown line. Take care, everybody.
Reassess the recommended period for keeping businesses shut and people at home. Are you at all concerned, as Trump said, that we cannot let the cure be worse than the problem itself?
We have to take care of the cure. That will make the problem worse no matter what. No matter what. We know what has to be done. We know you have to...
That's correct.